Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Um, so this month's campfire session is on the role utilization report. Um, so let's get started. Um, let's get intros out of the way. So my name is Omar. I am a senior customer success rep here at Aprica, and you may know me from the customer support side of things, usually through cases and training videos and so on. Moving to the agenda. So today we'll be discussing the role utilization report, what it has to offer, why you should use it, how it works, and just the understanding the different information it displays. Um, I'll go over the demo for it. I'll walk through the different settings, the different values, and how they calculate it. And obviously, this is a live demo, so I'd like for you to ask as many questions as you'd like. Uh, just there should be two options, I believe, Q&A and a chat option. If anybody could put something in either one of those, let me know it's working, and then we can get started with the demo. If anybody could put something in the Q&A or the webinar chat, just let me know it's working. Yep, I see the Q&A chat is working, so yep, Kelly's got something to ask. Kelly, do you have any questions? Are you able to use the Q&A? Let me know. But yeah, the Q&A is working, so I'd suggest using that for any questions you've got. All right. Um, Perfect. Yeah, that's working. Yes, Bailey, that is correct. This the Q&A is working. I can see your questions coming through. Thank you, Julie. Jules. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. So with the role utilization report, so let me paint a scenario. So you've now been able to set up your projects. You've assigned work to your resources. Your resources now have visibility in the things that they're assigned, things that they need to do, and they have been able to start working on those different tasks that they're assigned, different actions, and they're now logging time to it, and they're using the holiday functionality to put in any time off. So now you realize that you need to track all this information and figure out how well your resources are being utilized. Um, so this is where the role utilization comes in. Okay, I see a question from Kelly. Yes, this is working, but webinar chat is disabled. Yeah, so the chat will be disabled. Just go ahead and use the Q&A moving forward. Thank you. Yeah, so back to it. So the role utilization report is what will have to be what you can use. So it takes into account your holidays, your time logs, your hours scheduled, and it provides all that information bundled up in an out-of-the-box feature that's available just not out of the box, rather than you having to create Salesforce reports, which Alexi covered in our last session. So again, this is where the role utilization comes in. It provides you with all the information. It's ready to use. As your user start using mission control, you can start reviewing how well they're being utilized. So the role utilization report will enable you to take into account the time logs and the holiday records. So you're able to get the full picture of your each resource's utilization, each team's utilization. Yeah. So the role utilization report provides you with information on things like the total hours per week a user is expected to work, the total amount of hours that they've worked, and that's divided into the billable hours they've completed, any hours that they've completed that should be excluded from the billable capacity, any non-billable hours that they've completed. It will also show the holiday hours, and then using this information, it'll calculate the utilization percentage and it'll calculate the billable performance of that user, how much they're expected to work, and how well they're performing against that expected target. And it'll also show you the scheduled performance on how many hours they're scheduled and how well how many of those scheduled hours they're actually completing. Um, And I'll dive into a bit more detail on how those values are calculated once we get into the demo. Yeah, so that's some of the different information you'll see in the utilization. It also offers you a sort of a quick high-level overview by providing you with a traffic light status on the utilization of each resource. So you can just see that, okay, it's green, so that's I would assume that's good. Yellow, maybe not so good. Red, and that's something that you need to intervene, need to look into, reach out to the resource. So all this information is there to provide you with that visibility, and then you can action upon that accordingly. And you're also able to set your own breakpoints for those different traffic light statuses, different red, green, and amber colors. And I'll go over that as well. Yeah, so let's just jump into the demo now. So hopefully you're able to see my browser now in the mission control console. So you're able to access the role utilization report by from the mission control console. So I'm in the launchpad right now. To use the role utilization report, you can jump into the management pad. And from here, you'll be able to see a tile on the role utilization report. So you can just jump in by clicking the view report button, and it'll take you to the report. Alternatively, you could use the app launcher in the top left here, the 3x3, and just look up role utilization. And so you'll see two options here. One is the classic component and one is the lightning component. And that's indicated by the URL you see at the bottom when hovering over the link. So that's how you can access the role utilization report. So let's jump into the role utilization report now. So when you open it for the first time, this is likely what you'll see for the first time. You'll see three sections, a report settings section, an analytics section, and a report details section. So you won't see any data in these last two sections here because you need to specify some settings, some filters, and how you want to view that data. And once you click go here, over here, that's when that information will start populating. So first up here, you've got filter by. Filter by allows you to select what type of data that you want to filter it to. So if you're selecting master team, you have the option to select a specific master team, and you'll see the information summed up according to that master team. So if you're selecting master team, it will only pick up roles that have the master team set to true. So for example, I have a user that has the customer success set as their master team. It will show that resource in here when you click go. But if someone else is also on the customer success team, but that's not their master team, it's not going to show that information there. For that, you would have to use the teams setting over there. So that's the master team. With master team, you can either group it by role or by master team. So if you want to see information on a specific resource, so for example, if I do this for October, so I'm currently grouping it by role, and I'll do customer success as well. So I'll see all the roles that have the master team set to consultant or customer success. But if I group it by master team, it's only going to show two sections and all those values summed up in the appropriate grouping. So I'll see a consultants row and I'll see a customer success row. So that's what those group by options are for, and that really only applies if you're using the master team option. If you're using team, that's going to reset it to role only. And similarly, if you do that to role, that's only going to do it to role. Let's select team right now, and I will remove these teams. I'll select a location-based team I've got, so the AU team, and from here I can set the start and end dates. So by default, what it'll do is set the end date to the current date, and the start date will be 3 months prior to that end date. But for now, let's just say I'm only looking to see that information for the month of October. And you have the option to categorize that information by weekly or by a month view. So when you click go here, you'll see that those values have been summed up based on the different weeks. And if I change that to monthly, I'll only see one column here because it's only looking up the dates for the month of October. So let's jump back to weekly, make sure we set this to Monday here and set this to Friday here. So we should get about 5 weeks in there. So when I click go, you'll see that I've got two sections with a lot of information being populated here. And one thing to note about each one of these sections is that they're collapsible and they're persistently remembered. So if I close out one section, uh, for example, the analytics section, maybe I'm not using that as often. I only require the report details section. Between visits, the last used setting will be remembered. So if you switch this off, it'll remember that next time you access it. Um, so that's the persistently remembered settings there. Now that I have this information here, let's discuss the analytics and the report details. For analytics, you'll see that I've got a bar chart and some gauge charts. So for the bar chart first, you'll see that I've got two resources here in the Australian team, and I can see that some of those R's have been categorized into different values. So you'll see that I've got billable R's in the blue, I've got non-billable R's in the red, I've got excluded from billable capacity in the green, and I've got holidays in purple. So I can choose to, this chart is interactive, and I can choose to hide specific values that I don't want to see here. So maybe I don't want to see the non-billable hours. I can check that, and that'll be the chart will be updated to reflect that. Similarly, I can just uncheck that and add that back in. After that, you've got the total hours. So this is the total hours your resources have submitted. So they've submitted a total of 276 hours, and they were expected to submit 300 hours in this specified time period. So that's based on the hours per week value for both of these resources in the selected time period. And then you've got billable hours. So the billable hours they're expected to complete based on their billable target field on that is specified on their role record. And that's the total expected hours that they're expected to complete, which is 207.2, and the actual completed hours they've done, which is 197.3, along with their percentage. So that's the analytics section there. Moving to the report details section. You'll see that I've got, because I'm using the group by of role and I'm using a team, I'm seeing all the resources in the AU team, and each resource has its individual row defining all the values. So up first here, I've got Arthur here. So we'll go over some of these different values here and how they're calculated. So the hours per week value, this is based on the role record or the role availability record. So if I open up a role record here, this is picking up the hours per week value from here, the 20 hours. Just keep in mind that the role utilization does take into account the availability that you set for different time periods. So if you're using the manage availability function from here, if you have any role availability records for a specified time period, that will be taken into account. So for example, this resource started working 20 hours per week as a part-time resource, and then later on they started working full-time, and you don't want that information to be the historical data to be affected. In that case, you'd want to use role availability, and that will be taken into account in the different tools, including the role utilization report. So that's where the hours per week is coming in from. Your total hours is the total of the billable hours, the excluded from billable capacity, the non-billable hours, and the holiday hours. So this is just a sum of all those values, and that's broken down into each one of those sections at the bottom. So the billable hours, again, is just the billable hours that you've completed. So any time log that doesn't have the non-billable checkbox set to true, you'll see that time log as billable. Any time log that has the exclude from billable capacity checkbox is true, you'll see that added up over here. Like in this instance, I've got 6 hours for Arthur here. Then you've got non-billable hours. So any time logs that has the non-billable indicator field set to true, that'll be added here. And then you've got holiday hours. So any holidays that you submit within a mission control, those will be reflected here as well. So just one more thing to note here is that it will use the if you're using the role allocation automation settings, it will still take into account those values that you set. So for example, you're manually distributing the holiday hours across the holiday period. That will be reflected based on the manual distribution you've done. And that's based on the role allocation automation settings if you've enabled that and if you're using that. And if you're not using that, obviously that will still take into account. So that's the different R's and how the total R's is calculated. After that, you've got your utilization percentage, and this is calculated based on the total hours you've got here divided by the hours per week. So 20.5 divided by 20, that returns 101.25% as the utilization figure for this resource in this specific week. So it'll provide that for each week or each month if you selected the view as month. Um, and then it'll tally up the totals at the end and provide you with a total for that resource in the specified time period. Um, so that's the utilization figures. Now you'll notice that some of these figures are green, some of these are yellow or amber, and some of them are red. And this is mainly there to provide you with a quick indicator or quick view that, okay, so this resource, there's something that I need to look at. So he was doing just fine in the first few weeks of October, but now his hours he submitted has gone down and significantly in the last weeks. And this is something that you might want to reach out to the resource for and figure out what needs to be, what's happening, what needs to be done. Um, so that's a quick way to check that. You're also able to set your different breakpoints for these values. So, for example, it's currently set to anything above 80% is green, anything above 50% and below 80% is amber, and anything below 50% is red. But you can change how those you can change those different breakpoints, and you can do that by going into the role utilization report settings using this gear icon in the top right. So when I click in here, you'll see that I've got that breakpoint set. And obviously you can change that, you can adjust that accordingly. There's also a checkbox here, which will allow you to hide or display that setting, and you can just set that to true or false if you don't need to see that. But this, if you hover over the in tooltip over here, it'll show that the hours per week and the utilization field. So that's the hours per week field here and the utilization row here. Those will be hidden if you uncheck that. Um, After that, you've got two more settings here, two more rows that get added once you enable them. So I'll just add them in. And again, you've got the breakpoints that you can adjust for them. With the billable performance setting, you'll be able to see the billable capacity, the billable target in hours, and the billable performance. With the scheduled performance, you'll be able to see your total hours scheduled and the scheduled performance. So I'll just enable that, and I'll walk through how those different values are calculated. So it is now recalculated those values. Excuse me one sec. Okay, so it's now recalculated the values for the new fields that we've just added in. And I can see now that there's a billable capacity. So the billable capacity is it's a formula that calculates it takes the hours per week and it minuses any hours excluded from billable capacity. So let's take an example where I've got both of those. Yeah, let's take this example. So my hours per week for the week of the 23rd of October is 40, and the exclude from billable capacity is 3, and the holiday hours is 24. So 40 minus 3 minus 24, that is what the billable capacity will calculate. So that's the hours per week minus the exclude from billable capacity and the holiday hours, and that returns 13 hours for that week. So that's the billable capacity that I have for that specific week. Um, then it'll show you the billable target. So the billable target is the target percentage that you specify again on the role record. So the billable target is specified on a field here. And also this is also added to the availability record that we saw earlier. So that'll be updated. The appropriate or the correct for the time selected time period will be reflected here. Um, then you've got billable target hours, and that's the billable target times the billable capacity. So that's 80% of 13 hours in the specific week for this resource is 10.4 hours, and that's the billable target that I've got in that week. And now you can check to see if the resource is actually fulfilling that by just looking at the numbers or just the billable performance. So if you just want to look at the numbers, you'll see that I've completed 26.75 billable hours, but my target for that week was 10.4. So I'm definitely meeting my target for that specific week. Or you can just look at the billable performance and it's giving you a green light indicator that, yeah, this resource is very well utilized, is doing the full billable hours that he's set out to do. So the billable performance there is calculated based on the billable hours completed divided by the billable target hours. So that's the billable hours completed divided by the billable target hours here. So that's the billable performance. And now we can move to the last setting, which is last row, which is the total hours scheduled and the scheduled performance. So the total hours scheduled is based on the sum of all the hours that you've been assigned to work on that specific week. So let's take the example of 16.2 hours here. And then it'll divide that. So the total hours that you've actually completed here, 24.75, it'll divide that by 16.2 here. So the total hours divided by the total hours scheduled, and that's what's going to give you the scheduled performance. And again, it's got this green light indicator that this resource is doing well, and you can adjust that accordingly if you need to adjust the breakpoints from the role utilization report settings. And at the very end, you'll see a grand total displaying just summing up all the information from all your resources that you've selected. And you'll see a total of that. So for example, I've got hours per week here is 40 and 20, and it's showing 60 here. So the main use case for having a grand total in there is for you to have a quick overview of how your team is performing. So I'm currently looking at a specific team, and if you've got like hundreds of resources, maybe you just want to look at the overall utilization of your team, you can just jump to the grand total section, and it'll provide you with how well your team is performing. Obviously, it may not be an accurate reflection of how your resources um, are being shown. So for example, in this case, it's showing 47% here. And in this case, the total is being pulled down by this specific resource, and that's why you're seeing 18%. And that's what the other resources are there for. So you can see that, okay, it's 47% here. I need to find out which resources or what resources are the ones that are bringing down these figures. And so Arthur here is the one person that's bringing down the figure a lot. So that's the person that you want to talk to, figure out what's going on. So I've just got a question here. Is scheduled what is planned allocated? Yes, that is correct. So if I just open up a project here. So I'll just open up a project that I've got, maybe this one. So I've got different actions in here, and I've got different hours scheduled on them. So that's what it's referring to. So for example, I've got this action here where I have to create role records, and in that action, I've got 4 hours scheduled. So I've got a placeholder role here, but I can assign someone else. And for the time period that's specified here, that's the scheduled hours that you've set for that specific time period. And that's what's going to be reflected in the role utilization report. So for example, in this case, it's from uh, end of October to of the 1st of October, actually 31st October to 1st November. So those 2 days, and that'll likely be reflected in the first week here if I were to look up the placeholder role here. So if I try and look up the role, and I'll just look up the placeholder admin. Obviously, this is a placeholder role, so I don't have any hours in there, but the total scheduled hours will be reflected over there. So if I just add that in, it'll be more than 4 because the resource has uh, it'll be more than 4 because the resource is assigned to other work as well, but that's where the figure is being added to. So there's something else in that time period that's being adding to the contributing to that total of 8, but that's where that figure is being pulled in from. And this will also take into account the if you're not just the action, or if you maybe you're a contributor, that will be accounted for as well. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, so the scheduled will only be calculated if you have some hours that you've been assigned or have been assigned as or scheduled. So that's relating to this specific row here. The others would still work because you've got the other figures in there. But for the total hours scheduled, if you need a scheduled performance, you need to assign some hours to so that the formula is able to calculate something. So you need to have the scheduled and what the actual is. What the actual is what would be the time nodes that they've submitted, and the schedule is what you're assigning on the action level to those resources. Jump back to team. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. So you might have noticed that there's a field here called exclude from billable capacity. And this is available in a few different places. So for example, if I were to jump to an action here, I believe there should be exclude from billable capacity. Yeah. So I've got this field here that I can set to true. I can also set this to true at the milestone level, at the project level. And I can also do that for contributors. So when I go into the um, resource assignment wizard on the contributor record, I'm able to set the exclude from billable capacity field set to true. Um, and what this does is basically the main use case for it is it allows you flexibility in reducing the billable target hours from one week to another. So based on whether the role has been assigned to specific actions that usually fall outside of their usual target. So an example of this might be you've got Arthur here who's assigned to work on a support issue as part of an ongoing contract, and it's not really supposed to be counted as billable work, or it's supposed to go toward, or it's not supposed to go towards his billable target. That's when you'd want to use that. Or you're working on a request for a proposal, that the a user is responding to. It's not really billable work, but you do, and you don't want it to affect their billable capacity. So that's when you'd want to use that. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything else. But so regarding the hours per week, um, this will display 0 if both of the following criteria that I'll tell you applies to the resources. So for example, I've got a role that doesn't have any role availability records that I mentioned earlier, and they don't have any of these values specified on their role record. So let's say the hours per week is 0. Their days fields are 0. They have no availability records created to the managed availability, and for the time period that you've selected. And in that case, the hours hours per week will display a 0 value. So if you're wondering why that's occurring, you might want to check those data points, make sure those are populated. And it is also possible that the created date of the role record is greater than the reporting period. So maybe the role record was created much later for the period that you're looking at. So maybe the resource was created on 22nd November today, but you're looking for the period of 2nd to 3rd November, and that's going to display 0 because the resource wasn't created at that time. They hadn't joined at that time, so that's why you may see a 0 there. Um, yeah. The same applies for the billable target. So the billable target is picked up from the role record or the availability record. You want to make sure you populate that value to be able to see that information come through, and then subsequently calculate the rest of those other values that you're seeing here. Lastly, you have the option to export this data. So maybe you want to do some further analysis. Um, maybe you've got some other tools that you want to use outside of Salesforce. You have the option to do that. So you can export this as a CSV file. There is a button at the top right here that you can click, and once you do that, you're able to save that file. Once it's saved, you're able to open that up, and you'll see the same information being displayed. You'll see your resources. You'll see the different rows, the different weeks, the different values in there. So if you need to do any further analysis, you've got this option if you need to use that. Yeah, so that's all there is to the role utilization. Let me know if there's any questions. So I've got a question from Valeria. How do you find the details easily that underpins this information? So I'll tell you where this information is being picked up from. So if I just go back to my page here. So for example, if you're looking at the hours per week, that's obviously coming from the role record or from the role availability record that you find in the manage availability page. For total hours per week, that's based on the time logs. So the billable hours, that's based on time logs. Exclude from billable capacity, again, that's based on time logs. Non-billable hours completed, again, that's based on time logs. You've got holiday hours, and that's based on the holiday records that you've created. So if I just jump into time logs here and then holidays here, I'll open up a time log and I'll open up a holiday. So for time logs, you can see that I've got a field here called non-billable. If you check this as true, or if the non-billable indicator is set to true, that's a formula based on the that takes into account the non-billable field as well as the parent fields. So if this is true, this means that the hours that you've submitted in that time log will be categorized here. Then you've got your exclude from billable capacity, and that's going to categorize it under exclude from billable capacity. And similarly, if that non-billable is unchecked, it's going to categorize that as billable. Then you've got holiday hours, and that's pulling through from the holiday record. So if I've got 4 days off with 32 hours, that's going to divvy that up across those 4 days, and you'll see that information across in the holidays over here. So that's where those hours are those numbers are coming in from, and then the rest is the billable target is again from the role record, whereas the rest, the utilization percentage, the capacity, the billable target in hours, the billable performance, the scheduled performance, that's all just being calculated automatically. I do want to note that if you're using the role allocation automation settings where the role allocation, the role actuals are being generated. So for example, if you've got a time log here, I expect to see, because I have that setting enabled, I expect to see role actuals being created. So as you can see, for this time log, I've got a role actual, and this role actual will be taken into account. And the same applies for role allocations, and that is for the actions that I'm talking about. So and that goes towards the total hours scheduled. So if you've got an action that is 20 hours that is spread out across 10 days, you're going to have 2 hours per day. And so if any one of those days is within the range of that you've specified here, that's going to get tallied up here in the total hours scheduled based on the role allocation that you've created. So in this instance, maybe in this week, there's only 0.25 hours scheduled from one role allocation record, and that's where it's tallying up the values from. And I don't think there's anything else, but the rest is just calculated based on formulas. And all of these formulas are stored in a knowledge article that we've got. And I'll see if I can find that really quickly. So just go to knowledge-mc.aprika.com. From here, you can just look up the role utilization report. And within this report, you'll be able to see each one of those values and how they're calculated. Just goes into detail on what specific values are being used. So hopefully that answers your question, Valeria. Let me know if it doesn't, and yeah. Thank you, Bailey. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Any more questions? Well, if there's no more questions, you can definitely get in touch with us if you do come up with questions later on. You know how to reach us. You can reach us at support@aprika.com. Just email us with any questions you've got. You can also submit a ticket at aprika.com/support. Um, we have very strong we have a very strong user guide that you can use from the link here. We've got a lot of free training videos on our website that you can use. We've also got a strong knowledge base that you can use. We've recently revamped our learning portal. It goes into each feature, and it provides you with different personas that you can select for yourself and start your learning journey from there. You can also take an exam, a certification exam, to become mission control certified. I definitely recommend reviewing that. And yeah, that should be available on that link. Yeah, that's all from me. We hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for the feedback. Really appreciate it. That's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.